My name is Ingegerd Kastanrazi from the Kingdom of Atlantia, and you're listening to Inge Reads. In this recording, we will read pages 15 through 22 of the Marshal's Handbook from July 2020. This reading will cover weapons standards as well as siege combat. If you have any questions, comments, complaints, or concerns regarding this recording, please feel free to reach out to me through Facebook. If you have any questions regarding any of the rules or policies in this handbook, please feel free to reach out to your local marshal or your Kingdom Earl Marshal with questions. Page 15, Roman numeral 7, Weapons Standards. A. General. A1. With the exception of the hilts, guards, and pommels, no metal or non-approved rigid, granular, or liquid material may be used in the construction of single or two-handed weapons, including spears. A2. Primary weapons used in single-handed shall have a wrist strap or equivalent restraint, which will keep the weapon from leaving the immediate area of the user if released during any part of a bout or combat. Restraints are not required on hafted weapons used single-handed or on single-handed backup weapons. A3. Flails are expressly prohibited. A4. Mechanical devices known as sliders, which are used to guide or propel spears, are prohibited. A5. All weapons shall have all cutting edges and thrusting tips marked in a contrasting color. A6. The striking surfaces of all weapons, including the tip, shall be wrapped in a manner that allows no rattan splinters to protrude. A7. All thrusting tips and striking heads must be securely attached to the weapon. A8. The edges and tips of all striking surfaces shall be rounded. A9. No part of a weapon shall have sharp edges or protrusions with cross-section of less than 1.25 inch or 31.8 millimeters in diameter. Guards, pommels, hooks, etc. shall be firmly and securely affixed to the weapon haft. A10. It shall not be possible to force into a legal face guard any part of a weapon which may be reasonably be expected to contact an opponent during combat more than half an inch or 12.7 millimeters. Rattan weapons may have a handle section which is less than 1.25 inches or 31.8 millimeters, so long as it meets this criterion. Combat archery shafts may be thinner as long as the head and tail meet the criteria. A11. Rattan shall not be treated in any way that will substantially reduce its flexibility. For example, treat it with wax, resin, fiberglass, etc. A12. No weapon shall exceed 6 pounds or 2.73 kilograms. A13. No missile weapons intended to simulate firearms, slings, sling staffs, nor atlatls can be used on the field of armored combat. A14. No punch weapons or thrusting weapons that have the blade or tip more perpendicular than parallel to the grip. A15. No shovel handles on any thrusting weapon. B. Single-handed weapons. Weapons that shall be used in one hand shall have the following requirements. B1. Single-handed weapons shall be constructed of one of the following. A. Rattan. B. Rattan cord siloflex or siloflex equivalent. C. natural polypropylene round rod, maximum diameter 1.25 inches or 31.8 millimeters, and shall not be less than 1.25 inches or 31.8 millimeters in total diameter, including tape, along its entire length, excepting the handle. B2. Rattan cord Siloflex or Siloflex equivalent weapons shall be constructed using tubular materials meeting ASTM standard D-2239 or the international equivalent with a pressure rating of 160 psi or greater, having at least a 1.25 inch or 31.8 millimeter diameter on the outside and at least 0.125, that is 1/8 of an inch, or 3.2 millimeter walls, and having an inner core of rattan that fills the interior of the tubular material entirely. Periodic inspection shall be made to determine the condition of the inner core. B3. If the weapon has a head, it shall not be constructed of solely rigid materials. The head shall be firmly and securely attached to the haft. The head shall allow at least a 0.5 inch or 12.7 millimeter of progressive give between the striking surface and the weapon haft. B4. No weapon may have a cutting and or smashing surface at both ends. B5. When thrusting tips are used, they shall be at least the same diameter as the shaft of the weapon they are mounted on and have at least 0.75 inch or 19.1 millimeter of resilient material in front of the rigid tip of the weapon, providing at least 0.375, that is 3/8 of an inch or 9.53 millimeters of progressively resistant give across the surface of the thrusting tip. Note: pressing with the thumb into the center of the thrusting tip is not an adequate test. The give must be across the entire face of the tip. B6. Swords shall have a handguard, such as a basket hilt, quillions, or equivalent. B7. Total weapon mass shall not exceed 5 pounds, or 2.27 kilograms. C. Two-handed weapons. Weapons which may be used with one or two hands shall have the following requirements. C1. Weapons shall be constructed of rattan of not less than 1.25 inches or 31.8 millimeters in diameter, including tape. Polearms may contain blades constructed of split rattan so long as the pieces are securely fastened to the haft. C2. The weapon shall not be excessively flexible. C3. If the weapon has a head, it shall not be constructed of solely rigid materials. The head shall be firmly and securely attached to the haft. The head shall allow at least 0.5 inch or 12.7 millimeters of progressive give between the striking surface and the weapon haft. Semi-rigid, ultralight weapon-shaped foam heads and laminated or split rattan construction techniques do not require 0.5 or 12.7 millimeters of progressive give so long as their construction imparts striking characteristics similar to an unpadded weapon constructed of a single piece of rattan. C4. No weapons may have a cutting and or smashing surface at both ends. C5. Thrusting tips. A. When thrusting tips are used on rattan weapons with greater length than 7.5 feet or 2.286 meters, they shall be no less than 2 inches or 50.8 millimeters in diameter / cross-section and have 2 inches or 50.8 millimeters of resilient material in front of the rigid tip of the weapon, thereby providing progressively resistant give. B. When thrusting tips are used on rattan weapons with length less than or equal to 7.5 feet, they shall be at least the same diameter as the shaft of the weapon they are mounted on and have 1.5 inches or 38.1 millimeters of resilient material in front of the rigid tip of the weapon, thereby providing progressively resistant give. Page 17. Note, pressing with the thumb into the center of the thrusting tip is not an adequate test. The give must be across the entire face of the tip. 6. Weapons exceeding 7.5 feet or 2.286 meters shall not be used for cutting or smashing and shall be used for thrusting only. 7. Total weapon length shall not exceed 12 feet or 3.658 meters. D. Fiberglass spears. D1. Fiberglass spears shall not have a cutting or smashing head. D2. Fiberglass spears shall be constructed with pull-treated fiberglass shafts with an outside diameter of no less than 1.25 inches or 31.8 millimeters and no greater than 1 5/16 of an inch or 33.38 meters. Minimum manufacturer specified wall thickness shall be 0.125, that is, 1/8 of an inch, or 3.2 millimeters, and the minimum measurable wall thickness shall be 3/32 of an inch, or 2.38 millimeters. D3. The end of the shaft, which will have the thrusting tip attached, must be covered with a scheduled 40 PVC cap with an interior diameter the same as the outside diameter of the shaft, or 1.25 inches or 31.8 millimeters. The thrusting tip will then be attached over this cap. D4. All fiberglass spears must have a thrusting tip that is a minimum of 2 inches or 50.8 millimeters in diameter / cross-section and have 2 inches or 50.8 millimeters of resilient material in front of the PVC end cap, thereby providing progressively resistant give without allowing contact with the PVC end cap. D5. Shafts may be spliced using fiberglass rod or tube with a sidewall of 0.125 inch or 3.2 millimeters of the same or equivalent material, having an outside diameter of 1 inch or 25.4 millimeters and a length of 8 to 12 inches or 203 to 304 millimeters. Only 2 splices will be allowed per spear shaft. Each end to be spliced shall be cut square and clean of cracks or frayed fibers. The rod shall extend at least 4 inches into each spliced end. One or both of these 2 methods shall secure the splice. 5A. Epoxying both ends of the fiberglass rod before insertion. 5B. Epoxying one end of the fiberglass rod before insertion and thoroughly taping the splice over with fiber tape. D6. The butt end of the shaft shall be smooth and free of cracks or frayed fibers. The butt shall be taped over or otherwise sealed. If a weapon is completely taped, a marshal may require that one section be untaped enough to determine that the protruding fiberglass has not been used in the construction of the shaft. D7. Total spear length shall not exceed 12 feet or 3.658 meters. E. Throwing weapons. These weapons may be used for striking and may also be used to throw in melee scenarios where thrown weapons are allowed. Examples are thrust and throw javelins, axes, knives, etc. E1. Shafts shall be constructed of rattan not less than 1.25 inches or 31.8 millimeters in diameter along its entire length, or of 2 layers of siloflex or equivalent. The outer layer shall be 1 inch or 25.4 millimeters inner diameter siloflex, or 1.25 inch or 31.8 millimeters outer diameter, and the inner layer shall be 0.75 inch or 19.1 millimeters inner diameter siloflex. All siloflex used for throwing weapons must have a pressure rating of 160 psi or greater. If siloflex is used, both ends of the shaft shall be covered with either a scheduled 40 PVC cap with an interior diameter the same as the outside diameter of the shaft, 1.25 inches or 31.8 millimeters, or with a rubber stopper or equivalent means to prevent the tubing from penetrating the thrusting tips, fastened securely in place by tape and or glue. E2. Thrusting tips shall be used on any tip that can be reasonably assumed to contact a fighter when the weapon is used or thrown. Tips shall be no less than 1.25 inch or 31.8 millimeters in diameter / cross-section and have 1.25 inch or 31.8 millimeters of resilient material in front of the rigid tip of the weapon, thereby providing progressively resistant give. E3. If the weapon has a head, it shall not be constructed of solely rigid materials. The head shall be firmly and securely attached to the haft or handle. The head shall allow at least 0.5 or 12.7 millimeters of progressive give between the striking surface and the weapon haft or handle. E4. The weapon must have the owner's name, kingdom, and branch clearly and legibly printed on it in English characters for identification. E5. Total mass of the weapon shall not exceed 2 pounds or 0.91 kilograms. F. Combat archery bows and crossbows. F1. During inspection, all equipment must have its poundage and draw physically measured with a ruler or other meter device and poundage scale. F2. Marshals must calibrate their bow scales regularly to be accurate at either 35 or 50 pounds, depending upon the most prevalent bow in their kingdom, as measurements obtained with commonly used standard spring-type scales can vary over time. F3. No compound bows nor compound crossbow prods are allowed. F4. No non-society period sights, spring flipper rests, plunger buttons, stabilizers, clickers, or modern string release aids may be used. F5. Bows and crossbows must be powered solely by the flex of the limbs. F6. If both light and heavy bows and crossbows, by the standards as defined below, are on the field at the same time, then all heavy bows and crossbows must have their upper limb, or one limb for crossbows, covered with at least 4 inches or 10 centimeters of red material, tape, cloth, etc. F7. Hand bows. A hand bow's power is measured at 28 inches or 71 centimeters. If the bow is not designed to be drawn at 28 inches or 71 centimeters, then it cannot be used in SCA combat. 7B. Light hand bows measure 35 pounds, or 15.9 kilograms, or less at 28 inches or 71 centimeters. Heavy hand bows measure 50 pounds, or 22.7 kilograms, or less at 28 inches or 71 centimeters. 8. Crossbows. Crossbows are measured by inch per pound, or inch per pound as marked in the Marshal's Handbook, which is calculated by taking the poundage of the bow measured at the lock multiplied by the distance in inches from the front of the string at rest to the front of the string when in cocked position. A metric measurement of kilogram per centimeters, or kilogram to centimeters as noted. 8b. Light crossbows measure 600 inch-pounds, or 691 kilogram centimeters, or less. C. Heavy crossbows measure 1,000 inch-pounds, or 1,152 kilogram centimeters, or less. 8d. No crossbows may have a modern pistol grip. G. Combat archery ammunition. All ammunition must have the owner's name, not initials, and kingdom displayed clearly on it. G2. No metal can be used as ammunition construction material. G3. All ammunition has a maximum length of 28 inches or 71 centimeters from the back of the head/blunt to the string acceptor on the nock. G4. Optionally, ammunition may have fletches as long as they are securely attached and made of a soft material. Fletches may not project farther than half an inch or 12.7 millimeters from the shaft if they are less than 1.5 inches or 38.1 millimeters thick. G5. Light ammunition for use in light bows, or light crossbows only must consist of a fiberglass shaft, a blunt, either commercially manufactured or UHMW, and an APD, either commercially manufactured or HDPE. 5A. Fiberglass ammunition shafts. A Roman numeral 1. Solid pultruded fiberglass of between 0.25 or 6.5 millimeter and 3.75 inch or 9.5 millimeter in diameter. 2. Fiberglass shall be of good quality, defined as a significant bending pressure as applied by a Marshal not causing the shaft to break. 3. The shaft must be covered from behind the blunt to the front of the anti-penetration device, or APD, in a sturdy, tear-resistant tape, such as strapping, electrical, or duct tape. B. Anti-penetration devices, or APDs. 1. APDs must be attached no further than half an inch, or 12.7 millimeters, from the end of the arrow or bolt, including nock. 2. APDs must be attached securely via tape, glue, cable ties, etc. The method does not matter as long as it is securely attached and will not come off during normal use. This will be tested by marshals by grabbing and pulling on the APD with moderate force while twisting it slightly. If it detaches or moves lengthwise along the shaft, then it fails. 3. APDs must not have major cuts or cracks in them. If anything can be inserted into a crack, then the APD fails. C. HDPE APDs. 1. HDPE pipe. APD made from materials meeting ASTM D2239, minimum of 1 inch or 25.4 millimeters inner diameter, or ASTM D2737, minimum of 1.25 inch or 31.8 millimeters outer diameter, and manufactured of PE 3408, PE 3608, PE 3710, or PE 4710, resin or equivalent, Either 100 or 125 psi is approved. 2. The length of the top edge of the APD must be at least 1.25 inches or 3.2 centimeters if the front is cut square, or 0.625, that is 5/8 of an inch, or 16 millimeters if the front is cut at a 45-degree angle. 3. APD may have a channel routed in the bottom and or cuts made in the front and back edges for helping tape attachment. 4. All sharp edges must be eased. D. Commercially manufactured APDs. D1. Allowed commercial APSs, Asgard only. D2. All other designs or manufacturing techniques must be approved in writing by the Society Marshal's office prior to use. Contact the Deputy Society Marshal for Combat Archery for details for submission and testing of experimental combat archery missiles. 3. Commercial APDs may have only the following modifications: cutting the knock-off flush for use on a crossbow, making small holes for helping attachment, and roughing the interior surfaces for gluing. E. Blunts. 1. All blunts must be securely attached via tape, glue, cable ties, etc. The method does not matter as long as it is securely attached. However, at least one piece of sturdy tear-resistant tape must be extended over the blunt and be securely attached to the shaft on both sides. This will be tested by marshals by grabbing and pulling on the blunt with moderate force while twisting it slightly. If it detaches or moves lengthwise along the shaft, then it fails. Twisting around the shaft is okay. F. Commercially manufactured blunts. Allowed commercial blunts: Boulder, Fathead, and Fathead 2 only. F2. All other designs or manufacturing techniques must be approved in writing by the Society Marshal's office prior to use. Contact the Deputy Society Marshal for Combat Archery for technical details for submission and testing of experimental combat archery missiles. 3. Must be of a type designed for use on fiberglass shafts, 0.25-inch shaft acceptor, and can only be used with 0.25 or 6.5 millimeter shafts. 4. Commercial blunts may have no additional modifications. 5. Boulder-only rules. Only the original two-piece molded boulder blunt is approved. Blunts must be attached in such a way that at least 50% of the blunt is visible and can be inspected. The parting line visible around the circumference of the thickest part of the blunt in the two-piece molds. If no parting line is seen, the blunt cannot be used. There should be no delamination along the parting line. This will be tested by marshals by attempting to insert a fingernail with light force into the parting line. If the fingernail can penetrate the blunt, then it fails. G. UHMW, or ultra-high molecular weight polyethylene. 1. UHMW cores are constructed of at least 1.25 inches or 31.8 centimeters diameter UHMW rod with a hole drilled in it to accept the shaft. 2. The shaft hole must be at least half an inch or 12.7 millimeters deep, and there must be at least half an inch or 12.7 millimeters of UHMW in front of the shaft. At least half an inch or 12.7 millimeters and at most 1.25 inches or 31.8 centimeters of padding with progressive resistant give after taping must be added in front of the blunt and must be at least the same diameter as the blunt. 4. The head must have padding with progressive resistant give that extends from the tip of the padding to at least half an inch or 12.7 millimeters over the UHMW that brings the total diameter of the head to at least 1.5 inch or 3.81 millimeters after taping. The front edges of the blunt must be rounded over. 5. All sharp edges must be eased. 6. As long as all other requirements are met, the blunt may have material removed for aerodynamic or weight-reducing purposes. 6. Heavy ammunition for use in heavy bows, heavy crossbows, light bows, or light crossbows must consist of a tubular shaft and approved head. A. Tubular ammunition shafts. 1. The shaft must be constructed of HDPE pipe from materials meeting ASTM D2239, minimum of 1 inch or 25.4 millimeter inner diameter, or ASTM D2737, minimum of 1.25 inch or 31.8 millimeter outer diameter, and manufactured of PE 3408, PE 3608, PE 3710, or PE 4710 resin or equivalent. Either 100 or 125 psi is approved. 2. The tail must be left solid for at least 1 inch or 25.4 millimeters. Cuts may be made beyond that in order to install fletches if desired, but must have holes drilled at the ends of each cut to keep the cut from spreading. The tail may be slit if a 1 inch 25.4 millimeter or longer section of HDPE pipe is reinserted at the end and laced in place. 3. A knock may be cut into the tail end, but may be no deeper than ½ inch or 12.7 millimeters. Wooden knocks can be installed as long as they are securely attached by drilling and lacing with string. B. Heads. 1. Regardless of the construction method, the heads must be firmly attached by the use of tape or string. Marshals will check head attachment by pulling on them with a moderate level of force and twisting slightly. If the head shows sign of loosening, it fails inspection. Rubber stopper head. A rubber stopper size 6.5 is placed in the end of the tube such that it enters the tube at least ½ inch or 12.7 millimeters and is well attached. Resilient padding of at least 0.5 inch or 12.7 millimeters and at most 1.25 inch or 31.8 millimeters after taping is then added on top of the head and be at least the same diameter as the head. The head must have padding with progressive resistant give that extends from the tip of the padding to at least 0.5 inch or 12.7 millimeters over the rubber stopper to bring the total diameter of the head to at least 1.5 inches or 3.8 centimeters after taping. D. Boulder blunt head. 1. Boulder blunts may be used by cutting the support fins away so that the blunt sides over the HDPE pipe and attaches securely. D2. Resilient padding of at least ½ inch or 12.7 millimeters and at most 1.25 inch or 31.8 millimeters after taping is then added on top of the head and, as it reads here, sorry, there's 2 ands, be at least the same diameter as the head. Boulder blunt head 3. The head must have padding with progressant resistant give that extends from the tip of the padding to at least ½ inch or 12.7 millimeters over the boulder blunt to bring the total diameter of the head to at least 1.5 inches or 3.8 centimeters after taping. D4. Any classic style of boulder blunt can be used in this manner, whether 1 or 2-piece mold or designed for fiberglass or wood. E. Crutch tip head. A crutch tip is placed on the end of the tube such that it covers the tube at least ½ inch or 12.7 millimeters and is well attached. resilient padding of at least 0.5 inch or 12.7 millimeters and at most 1.25 inch or 31.8 millimeters after taping is then added on top of the head and be at least the same diameter as the head. 3. The head must have padding with progressive resistant give that extends from the tip of the padding to at least 0.5 inch or 12.7 millimeters over the crutch tip to bring the total diameter of the head to at least 1.5 inch or 3.8 centimeters after taping. Ensure there is no metal in the crutch tip, as no metal may be used in ammunition construction. F. Tennis ball head. A tennis ball is placed at the end of the tube and attached via tape and/or string. The ball shall not be perforated, as this leads to it getting dirt, water inside of it. 2. Regulation tennis balls may be used as ammunition heads, as is with the following restrictions. Balls must weigh less than 3 ounces or 85 grams. Balls must not be covered in tape. Dyes or stains may be used to change color. 7. Fellwalker bolts. A. The Fellwalker design is approved for crossbows only, heavy and light. B. The shaft is of solid fiberglass of between 0.25 inch or 6.5 millimeter and 0.375, that is 3/8 of an inch, or 9.5 millimeter diameter. Fiberglass shall be of good quality, defined as significant bending pressure is applied by a Marshal, not causing the shaft to break. The core is made from UHMW rod of at least 1.25 inches or 31.8 millimeter diameter with a hole drilled in it to accept the shaft. D. The shaft hole must be at least 1 inch or 25.4 millimeter deep, and there must be at least 1 inch or 25.4 millimeter of UHMW in front of the shaft. 7E. The striking surface must have at least 1 inch or 25.4 millimeter and at most 1.25 inches or 31.8 millimeter of padding with progressive resistant give. After taping, it must be at least the diameter of the blunt. 7F. The head must have padding with progressive resistant give that extends from the tip of the padding to at least 1/2 inch or 12.7 millimeters over the UHMW that brings the total diameter of the head to at least 1.5 inch or 3.8 centimeters after taping. G. The tail end must have a disc of UHMW installed that is at least 1.25 inches, 31.8 millimeter diameter, at least 1/2 inch or 12.7 millimeter thick, and drilled at least 0.25 inch or 6.5 millimeter deep to accept the shaft. It must be attached securely via tape, glue, cable ties, etc. The method does not matter as long as it is securely attached and will not come off during normal use. This will be tested by marshals by grabbing and pulling on the APD with moderate force while twisting it slightly. If it detaches or moves lengthwise along the shaft, then it fails. H. The shaft must be covered from behind the blunt to the front of the anti-penetration device, or APD, and sturdy tear-resistant tape such as strapping electrical or duct tape. I. All sharp edges must be eased. This concludes the section Roman numeral 7 of the weapon standards. I will now read section 8 of siege combat, which is only a portion of page 22. 8. Siege combat. A. General. Siege engines or structures may be used in combat during melees and wars in accordance with the rules set forth in the Siege Engines Handbook. B. Munitions. B1. Siege class munitions are denoted by being primarily yellow and include ballista bolts and rocks, 1 pound or 0.45 kilogram foam, or 4 tennis ball clusters. B2. Small arms munitions include single tennis balls, and tube-shafted combat archery arrows and bolts. C. Blow acknowledgement. C1. A blow from a siege-class ammunition to any legal target area shall be judged fatal or completely disabling. C2. Blows from siege-class ammunition to shields shall be judged fatal or completely disabling to the bearer of the shield unless otherwise specified by scenario rules. C3. Handheld weapons struck by siege-class munitions shall be considered destroyed. C4. Small arms munitions fired from siege engines shall be treated as combat archery projectiles. C5. Siege munitions are considered spent upon striking a target, the ground, or a battlefield structure. D. Destroying siege engines. And this does go into page 23, so that does need to change in the Marshal's Handbook eventually, but I will continue and finish the section on siege engines. So D, destroying siege engines, continues on page 23. D1, fighters shall stay clear of moving parts and, when possible, approach siege engine structures from the side. D2, striking or thrusting siege engines or structures with handheld weapons is strictly prohibited. D3, siege engines may be destroyed by placing a handheld weapon on the engine or structure, then declaring this weapon is destroyed, or by being struck by siege-class munitions from another siege engine. D4, siege engine crews are fully armored combatants and shall be treated as would be any other fighter on the field. D5, if fighting occurs within 5 feet or 1.524 meters of an engine that is cocked or loaded, a hold shall be called and the engine shall be declared destroyed and removed from the combat area and made safe. And this concludes the section on siege engines. This also concludes part 5 of Inge Reads the Marshal's Handbook, July 2020 edition. Again, if you have any questions, comments, or concerns regarding this recording, you may address them to me. I hail from the Kingdom of Atlantia. And as always, please check with your kingdom rules and your kingdom policies on fighting, as there might be additional policies in addition to the society-wide rules. If you have any questions, check with your local marshal or progress up the chain to your marshal before going to the society marshal. I hope you enjoy this reading, and I hope it is some help, and have a good day.